The world known as Sylvan Prime was a place of sharp edges and loud sounds. The sky was not blue but a constant dull orange. The trees were not like the friendly green trees of Earth. They were giant, twisted things with leaves like black knives. The air itself buzzed and chirped with the noises of creatures that were best left unseen. On this harsh world, a small circle of white buildings sat in a clearing. This was the Human Survey Outpost. Its job was to study the planet, to learn about the plants, the weather, and most of all, the animals. Inside one of the buildings, a man named Jin sat before a large screen. The screen showed lines of data and moving images of the forest. Jin was a biologist. His job was to watch and learn, not to touch or interfere. He was a calm man with a quiet voice and patient eyes. He found the wild noise of Sylvan Prime more interesting than frightening. His friend, a woman named Su Min, was different. She was a brilliant scientist, but she was always a little nervous. The dangers of the planet made her tense. "Jin, look at this," Su Min said, her voice tight. She pointed at her own screen. "The big pack is on the move. The Cathar. They are hunting the grazer animals to the east. The energy readings are intense." Jin turned to look. The Cathar were the reason for the strictest rules on Sylvan Prime. They were the top predators. They were huge, much bigger than a man. They looked a little like wolves from Earth, but they were built of solid muscle and covered in thick, dark fur. They had 6 legs, each ending in claws that could cut through metal, and they had 6 bright yellow eyes that saw everything. "They are just doing what they must to live, Su Min," Jin said, his voice even and soft. "That is their way. We are the visitors here. We only watch. We do not get involved." He turned back to his own screen. He was watching a different part of the forest closer to the outpost. He zoomed in with his camera. He liked to watch the smaller life, the little creatures that scurried in the undergrowth. But today he saw something that made him sit up straight. There near the base of a giant razor-leafed tree was a small, wobbly shape. It was a Cathar cub. It was alone. Jin's breath caught in his throat. This was very bad. The adult pack was far away, focused on their hunt. A lone cub was a target. There were other hunters in this forest, smaller but just as deadly, that would not miss a chance for an easy meal. The cub itself did not know any danger. It was tumbling around, chasing its own tail. It pounced on a falling leaf. It was simply playing, lost in its own little world. Jin knew the rules. Protocol was clear. Do not interfere. Any contact could change the animal's behavior. It could make them see humans as a threat. Or worse, it could make them lose their fear of humans, which was also dangerous. But he also knew he could not just sit and watch. He could not let the little creature die because it was curious and playful. "Su Min," he said, his voice low, "I am going out. The cub from the main den is alone. I am just going to guide it back towards its home." Su Min's head snapped up. "What? No, Jin? That is a direct violation. You cannot. It is too dangerous. If the adults return and find you near their cub, I will use the stealth field," Jin said, already standing up and pulling on his tough outdoor jacket. "They will not smell me or hear me. I will just be a shadow. I will just make sure it does not wander deeper into the woods." "This is a mistake," Su Min insisted, her face worried. "Please, Jin, think about this." Jin gave her a small, reassuring smile. I am thinking about a young life that does not deserve to end today because of bad luck." He walked to the airlock door. He picked up a small device and clipped it to his belt. This was the stealth field generator. When he turned it on, it would make him very hard to see and would hide his human smell. It was not perfect, but against a distracted cub, it should be enough. The outer door hissed open, and the sounds of Sylvan Prime washed over him. The buzzes and clicks were much louder out here. The orange light was strange on his skin. He took a deep breath and turned on the stealth field. The world around him shimmered for a second, and then he felt invisible. He moved quietly away from the outpost and towards the tree line. His plan was simple. He would get between the cub and the deep, dark part of the forest. Then he would make a small, gentle noise to scare the cub back in the direction of its den. He would not touch it. He would not even let it see him clearly. He moved through the sharp grass, his boots making almost no sound. He could see the cub up ahead. It was now batting at a glowing bug with its soft paws. It was so small, so harmless. Jin positioned himself exactly where he wanted to be. He was now a barrier between the cub and danger. He took a small rock, ready to toss it lightly into the bushes near the cub to startle it, but he was too slow. The cub's head suddenly popped up. Its 6 little eyes blinked. It was not looking at the rock. It was looking right at him. The stealth field was good, but it was not made for the sharp, curious eyes of a baby predator. The cub had seen a shimmer, a movement that was not part of the forest. It did not run away. It did not make a fearful sound. Instead, it let out a happy little chirp. It thought this strange, wobbly shadow was a new friend. It bounded forward, its 6 little legs carrying it in a clumsy, joyful run straight towards Jin. Jin's heart started to beat very fast. This was not the plan. He stood completely still, hoping the cub would lose interest. It did not. It ran right up to his legs. It sniffed the air around his boots. Its wet black nose left a tiny smudge on the hard gray plastic. Then it looked up, right to where Jin's face would be. It opened its mouth. It was not a snarl. It was a playful, open-mouthed grin full of tiny, needle-sharp teeth. And with the simple testing bite of all young animals, it leaned forward and nipped the hard toe of Jin's boot. Click. The sound of its little teeth tapping against the tough material was very small, but in the quiet of the forest to Jin it sounded as loud as a gunshot. This was the moment. This was where everything could go wrong. If he shouted, if he jerked his foot away, if he showed any fear or aggression, the cub might cry out. That cry could carry. It could bring the entire pack down on him in a furious, protective rage. His mind showed him a flash of those powerful claws and sharp teeth. He had a choice, fear or understanding. Jin looked down at the little creature. It was not attacking. It was playing. It had tested his boot, this strange new thing, and found it interesting. It was waiting to see what the strange shadow would do next. And so Jin made his choice. He did not move his foot. He did not yell. Instead, he let out a sound. It was a soft, warm, rumbling laugh. It was a real laugh. The kind you make when you see something truly funny and sweet. It was a sound that held no fear, no anger, only cheerful surprise. Then slowly, carefully, he crouched down. The stealth field flickered as he moved, and his form became a little more visible. He made a soft sound in his throat, a gentle chuffing noise trying to copy the cub's own happy chirps. The cub's ears twitched. Its 6 eyes widened. It let out another more excited chirp. It nipped the boot again, this time even more gently, its whole back end wiggling with the force of its wagging tail. The strange shadow was not scary. The strange shadow was fun. "Hello, little friend," Jin whispered, his voice barely a breath. "You are very brave, and you are very, very lost." He slowly reached into a pocket on his pants. He pulled out a small wrapped food bar he kept for himself. He carefully unwrapped it and broke off a tiny, crumbly piece. He held it out on his flat palm, then gently tossed it onto the ground in front of the cub. The cub sniffed the crumb. Its nose twitched. Then in a flash, its little tongue darted out and it ate the piece. It looked back at Jin, its eyes now full of a new, powerful emotion. It was not just curiosity anymore. It was trust, but in the forest, trust is a fragile thing. And from the deep, dark shadows of the trees behind the cub, a new sound came. A sound that froze the blood in Jin's veins. It was a low, deep, rumbling growl. It was the sound of a mother who had been watching, and she was not happy. The low growl vibrated through the air, a sound so deep Jin felt it in his bones. It was the sound of the forest itself turning hostile. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, to shout, to do something. But his mind, the calm, observing part of him, knew that would be death. Movement was a threat. A sudden noise was a challenge. He stayed perfectly still, crouched low to the ground. His eyes, wide with a fear he forced down, looked past the cub. From between the sharp black trees, a shape emerged. It was the Cathar alpha female. She was enormous, a mountain of muscle and dark fur. A long white scar cut across her muzzle, a story of some past battle. Her 6 amber eyes were not on her playful cub. They were locked directly on Jin. She took one slow, deliberate step forward. Her head was low, her lips pulled back to show teeth as long as Jin's fingers. A silent snarl. She was between him and her child, a living wall of fury. The cub, oblivious to the tension, chirped happily at its mother. It trotted over and rubbed against her powerful front leg, looking up as if to say, "Look what I found." Jin did not move a muscle. He kept his hands open and visible, resting on his knees. He lowered his gaze, looking down at the ground near her feet. In the world of predators, a direct stare was a challenge. Showing his neck and looking away was a sign of submission. He was no threat. He hoped she could understand that. The alpha female sniffed her cub, checking it over. Then her head swung back to Jin. She took another step, then another. The distance between them was closing fast. Jin could smell her now, a wild scent of pine, earth, and musk. He could see the individual hairs of her thick coat, the power in her shoulders. He closed his eyes. He thought of Sumin back in the outpost, probably watching this on a camera, her hand over her mouth. He thought of the rules he had broken. This was the price. He prepared for the impact of claws and teeth, but the impact did not come. He felt a rush of warm, smelly air. He felt a wet, rough surface nudge against his open hand. It was her nose. His eyes flew open. The alpha female was sniffing his fingers. She sniffed the hand that had held the food. She sniffed his sleeve, his arm, the top of his head. Her breath was hot on his neck. She was reading his scent, learning everything about him. She could smell the food crumb. She could smell the scent of her own cub on his boots from the playful nips. And most importantly, she could smell that he was not afraid in an aggressive way. His body was not pumping out the sharp, acidic smells of terror and rage. He was just still and calm. After what felt like a lifetime, the alpha female pulled her head back. She let out a sound. It was not a growl. It was a deep, rumbling chuff. It was the same kind of sound Jin had made to her cub. It was a sound of recognition. Then she turned. She nudged her cub with her head, guiding it away from Jin and back towards the trees. The cub looked back at Jin and let out a little complaining chirp, but it followed its mother. Jin stayed crouched, not daring to believe it. He watched as the huge female melted back into the shadows of the forest, her cub at her side. He was alive. He was unharmed. He did not move for a long time. He waited until the sounds of the forest returned to normal. The buzzes and clicks started up again. The immediate danger was gone. Slowly, stiffly, he stood up. His legs felt weak. He turned and walked back to the outpost, his mind racing. The airlock door hissed open. Sumin was standing right there, her face pale. "Jin, you idiot! I saw everything. I thought you were dead," she shouted, her voice a mix of anger and relief. Jin just walked past her and sat down heavily in a chair. He told her everything, his voice quiet. He told her about the cub nipping his boot, about his laugh, about the food, and about the mother's inspection. Sumin listened, her anger fading into amazement. "She accepted you," she whispered. "She checked you and she accepted you. Do you know what this means?" "It means I am very lucky," Jin said, rubbing his face. "It is more than luck," Sumin said, her excitement growing. "This is unprecedented. No human has ever had that kind of contact with a Cathar pack and lived. They have always been observed as hostile and territorial, but you were not a threat. You were a playmate to the cub. The mother saw that. The leader of the outpost, a woman named Hana, came over. She had also been watching the video feed. Her face was serious. "Jin, what you did was incredibly dangerous and against all protocols," Hana said. Her voice was firm. "But Sumin is right. What happened after the danger is revolutionary. We have a chance here, a chance to learn about the Cathar in a way we never thought possible." Jin looked at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we cannot let this end here," Hana said. "We have to see how far this goes. We need to know if this was a one-time thing or if you have truly been accepted." The next day, Jin stood again at the airlock door. This time it was an official mission. Hana had approved it. He was not to take any weapons. He was to go back to the same spot. He was carrying a small bag of approved food, rich raw meat from a local animal that the Cathar were known to eat. "Go slowly," Hana said over the comms in his ear. "Let them make the first move. If there is any sign of aggression, you retreat immediately. Understood?" "Understood," Jin said. His heart was beating fast again. This was even more frightening than yesterday. Yesterday was an accident. Today was a test. He walked out into the orange light. He went to the same spot near the razor-leafed tree. He stood still and waited. For a long time, nothing happened. The forest was quiet. He started to think it had all been a strange dream. Maybe they were gone. Maybe he had imagined the whole thing. Then, a movement. A small dark shape came tumbling out of the bushes. It was the cub. It saw Jin and let out an excited, high-pitched chirp. It ran straight towards him, its tail wagging so hard its whole body wiggled. It ran right up to his boots, and just like before, it nipped the toe. Click. Jin felt a wave of relief. He laughed, the same cheerful, warm laugh from the day before. He crouched down. "Hello again, little friend," he said softly. He opened his bag and took out a piece of the meat. He placed it on the ground in front of the cub. The cub sniffed it and then devoured it in one gulp. It looked up at him, wanting more. But then Jin saw the shadows move. More shapes emerged from the trees. The alpha female was there watching, and with her were two other adults, a large male and a slightly smaller female. The whole pack was here. They did not come close. They stood at the edge of the clearing, simply observing. They watched their cub interact with the strange, two-legged creature. They watched Jin give it food. They watched the cub nip his boots playfully. Jin stayed crouched, not making any sudden moves. He took out more pieces of meat. He did not offer it to the adults. He just placed it on the ground for the cub. He was following the rules of the wild. He was providing for the young, which was a peaceful, pack-like thing to do. After the cub had eaten a few pieces, the alpha female made that soft, chuffing sound again. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest. The other two adults followed her. The cub, after one last nip at Jin's boot, trotted after them. Jin was left alone again. He had not been attacked. He had been observed and then ignored. It was a huge success. He reported this to Hana over the comms. "Good." Hana's voice came back, filled with excitement. "Very good, Jin. This is more than we could have hoped for. You are no longer an intruder to them. You are a curiosity, a harmless one. We will try again tomorrow." And so Jin went back the next day and the day after that. Each time the ritual was the same. He would go to the spot. The cub would greet him with a nip to his boots. He would laugh and give it food. The pack would watch from a distance. Each day they seemed to watch from a little closer. Each day they seemed a little less tense. After a week, something new happened. Jin was walking towards the spot when he saw the entire pack moving through the trees ahead of him. They were going on their daily patrol of their territory. The cub was with them. The alpha female stopped. She looked back at Jin. She chuffed. Then she kept walking. The cub ran back, nipped Jin's boot, and then ran to catch up with its mother. It was an invitation. Hesitantly, Jin started walking too. He did not walk with them. He walked far to the side on the very edge of their group. He was not one of them, but he was not an outsider either. He was being allowed to follow. He was being allowed to walk with the pack. The days turned into a new routine for Jin. Every morning he would prepare the food pack. It was always the same. Thick strips of raw meat from a local animal. Then he would walk out of the outpost and into the orange light of Sylvan Prime. He no longer needed to go to the same spot by the razor-leafed tree. Now he would walk towards the general area of the Cathar den. Often he would meet them as they started their day. The pack was large. There was the scarred alpha female, her massive mate, two other females and a younger male. And, of course, the cub. The cub was growing fast. It was less wobbly on its 6 legs now, but its greeting never changed. Every time it saw Jin, it would run over with a happy chirp and nip the toe of his boot. Click. It was their special hello. Jin would always answer with his warm laugh and give the cub a piece of meat. The pack's behavior towards him had also changed. They no longer watched him from a distance with tense suspicion. They simply accepted his presence. When they moved through the forest, they let him walk along the edge of their group. He was like a strange, slow-moving follower. He was careful to never get in their way. He never approached the adults directly. He always kept his movements slow and predictable. He was not a member of the pack, but he was not a threat. He was something in between, a friendly outsider who brought food for the youngest member. One afternoon, the pack was resting in a sunny clearing. The adults were lying down, their eyes half closed. The cub was practicing its pouncing skills on a large leaf-like insect. Jin sat on a rock a respectful distance away, simply watching. The cub, tired of the insect, looked for something else to do. Its 6 bright eyes landed on Jin. It trotted over. It did not nip his boot this time. Instead, it pushed its head against Jin's leg. It was a hard push, almost knocking him off balance. Jin understood. It wanted to play. He reached out a hand and slowly, gently scratched behind its ear. The cub leaned into the touch, a low rumbling purr vibrating from its chest. It was a sound of pure contentment. One of the adult females lifted her head and watched this. Her ears were forward, curious, not flat with anger. She watched for a moment, then put her head back down to rest. It was okay. This was a big step. Touch was different from just being near. Touch meant trust. Back at the outpost, the team was learning amazing things. Jin wore a small camera on his jacket. Through his walks with the pack, they saw parts of the forest they had never seen before. They learned where the Cathar found water. They saw the plants they sometimes ate for medicine. They observed how they communicated with soft chuffs and growls and the position of their tails. Sumin was especially excited. Their social structure is incredible, Jin. They are so coordinated, and they have accepted you into it. It is a miracle. Hana was more cautious. It is progress, Jin. But remember, they are still wild animals. Their mood can change. Always be careful. Jin knew she was right. He never forgot the power of the alpha female. He never forgot the sharpness of her teeth. But he also felt a connection to them now. He had names for them in his head. The alpha was Scar, her mate was Boulder. The young male was Scout. The cub, he just called Little One. One day, the pack was on the move, heading towards a rocky part of the forest they rarely visited. Jin followed as usual. The air felt different. The usual forest sounds were quieter. The pack was more alert. Their ears were swiveling and their noses were testing the air. Scar, the alpha female, stopped. She let out a low growl that was different from her usual sounds. It was a warning. Jin stopped walking immediately. He looked around, trying to see what she saw, then he saw it. On a high rock ahead of them stood another predator. It was long and sleek, with spotted fur and 6 powerful legs. It had a mouthful of thin, sharp teeth. Jin recognized it from the outpost files. It was called a slasher cat. It was a solitary hunter, but it was very dangerous. It was known to steal young Cathar cubs if it got the chance. The slasher cat was looking right at Little One. The Cathar pack formed a tight circle around the cub. They were all growling now, a deep, threatening sound. They were ready to fight. The slasher cat crouched, getting ready to jump. Jin's heart was pounding. He was unarmed. He was just a man. What could he do? If he ran, he would be safe. But he could not leave them. He thought of Little One nipping his boots. He thought of the cub's trusting eyes. He had to do something. He remembered a trick from old Earth stories. He took a deep breath. Then he stood up as tall as he could. He waved his arms over his head. And he shouted. It was not a scream of fear. It was a loud, deep, angry yell. "Hey, get out of here!" The effect was instant. The slasher cat was startled. Its focus broke from the cub. It looked at this strange, noisy, 2-legged creature it had never seen before. The unexpected sight and sound confused it. It hesitated. That hesitation was all the Cathar needed. With a roar, Boulder, the alpha male, charged forward. He was huge and fast. The other adults followed him. The slasher cat, seeing the whole pack coming at it, decided the meal was not worth the fight. It turned and with a snarl of frustration leaped off the rock and disappeared into the forest. The danger was over. The pack gathered around the cub, sniffing it and licking it to make sure it was safe. Then Scar, the alpha female, turned. She looked at Jin. She walked towards him. Jin stood still, his arms at his sides. He had just made a lot of noise and movement. He did not know how she would react. She stopped in front of him. She looked up at his face. Her 6 intelligent eyes studied him. She sniffed the air around him. She could smell his adrenaline, his fear from the moment. But she could also understand what he had done. He had helped protect the pack. He had helped protect her cub. She did not chuff. She did not nudge him. Instead, she did something she had never done before. She sat down right in front of him. Then she lowered her head in a slow, deliberate nod. It was a sign of respect. Then she got up and returned to the pack. They continued their walk as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. That evening, as the pack settled down for the night in a sheltered cave, Jin prepared to leave. He always went back to the outpost to sleep. But as he turned to go, Scar let out a soft growl. She looked at him. Then she looked at the entrance of the cave. She did not block his way, but the meaning was clear. He was being invited to stay. It was not safe for a human to sleep out in the open on Sylvan Prime. But inside the Cathar den, surrounded by the pack, he would be safer than anywhere else outside the outpost. Hesitantly, Jin walked to the entrance of the cave. He sat down with his back against the rock wall just inside the shelter. He was not going to sleep in the middle of them. That was too much. But he was staying. The pack settled around him. Little One came and curled up against his side, purring softly. The huge warm body of Boulder lay down near the entrance, guarding them all. Jin sat in the dark, listening to the peaceful breathing of the sleeping predators. He was not just a follower anymore. He was not just a food bringer. He had helped them. He had stood with them. He was under their protection. He was part of the family. The night Jin spent at the mouth of the den was the deepest and most peaceful sleep he had ever known on Sylvan Prime. The warmth of the cub against his side and the solid, living presence of the pack around him was a better security system than any force field. When the orange sun rose, he woke to find the Cathar already stirring. They moved around him as if he were just another rock in their cave. The morning greeting was now a full family affair. Little One, of course, began with the ritual nip to his boot. But then Scar, the alpha female, would come over and push her massive head against his chest, a gesture of solid, simple acceptance. Boulder would give a low, rumbling chuff in his direction. He was no longer on the edges. He was in the middle of it all. His walks with the pack became more integrated. He learned their paths, their favorite resting spots, the hidden streams where the water was sweetest. He began to understand the subtle meanings in their sounds and body language. A flick of an ear, the tilt of a head, the depth of a growl, it was all a language, and he was slowly learning to speak it. Back at the outpost, the mood was a mix of excitement and growing tension. The scientific data was priceless, but the Galactic Command, the organization that funded the outpost, was getting nervous. A message came through from Command. A man named Commander Vance appeared on the main screen. His face was stern. "Outpost Leader Hana," he began, his voice crisp. "Your reports on the Cathar integration are remarkable. However, Command is concerned. The potential for cultural contamination is high. We cannot have a predator species becoming dependent on human interaction." Hana stood straight. "Commander, with all respect, there is no dependency. Jin provides a small supplement of food to the cub, a common social bonding behavior in pack animals. The Cathar hunt and provide for themselves perfectly well. We are learning more about xenobiology in a month than we have in the previous year." Vance's expression did not change. "Be that as it may, the situation is unregulated. We are sending a specialist, Dr. Ree. He is an expert in first contact protocols. He will assess the situation. If he deems the contact is harmful or dangerous, the integration project will be terminated." Vance out, the screen went dark. The room was silent. Suman turned to Hana, her face worried. "Terminated? What does that mean?" Hana's lips were a thin line. "It means if this Dr. Ree decides he doesn't like what Jin is doing, they will order Jin to break off all contact. They might even relocate the outpost." Jin, who had been listening, felt a cold knot in his stomach. Break off contact. He thought of Little One waiting for him. He thought of Scar's trusting nudge. They were his pack. You don't just abandon your pack. A few days later, a ship arrived. Dr. Ree was a small, neat man with sharp eyes and a datapad always in his hand. He did not smile. "Jin, I presume," Dr. Ree said, looking him up and down. "I have read your reports. Unconventional methods. I will be observing your next interaction with the species." So the next day, Jin walked out to meet the pack, with Dr. Ree following a safe distance behind, clad in a full protective suit. The pack was waiting. Little One saw Jin and chirped, running forward for the boot nip and his laugh. Jin gave him the meat. Then Scar came over for her morning headbutt. The rest of the pack gathered around, their bodies relaxed and comfortable with Jin in their midst. Dr. Ree watched from behind a tree, his datapad recording everything. He did not look impressed. He looked concerned. Later, back in the outpost, Dr. Ree gave his assessment. "The animal is clearly habituated," he said, tapping his datapad. "It approaches without fear. The adult exhibits diminished caution. This is a classic sign of negative conditioning. They are losing their natural wariness. That's not what's happening," Jin argued, his calm voice rising for the first time. "They aren't losing wariness. They are gaining trust. They still hunt. They still patrol. They chased off a slasher cat just last week. They are the same predators they always were. They just know I am not a danger." Dr. Ree shook his head. "Your emotional attachment is clouding your judgment, Jin. You see a pack. I see a group of apex predators whose natural instincts are being degraded by human interference. My report to Command will recommend an immediate end to the contact. We will initiate a gradual separation protocol." Jin felt a surge of panic. "Gradual separation? What does that mean?" "It means you will stop going out there," Dr. Ree said flatly. They will forget you in time and their natural behaviors will reassert themselves. They won't forget, Jin said, his voice tight. They will think I am dead, or that I abandoned them. For a pack animal, that is a trauma. It is a necessary one, Dr. Ree replied, for the purity of the species. That night, Jin lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't do it. He couldn't just disappear. It was a betrayal. It was wrong. The next morning, he went to Hana. I have to say goodbye, he said, his voice heavy.
I can't just vanish.
I have to go one last time. I owe them that, Dr. Ree protested, but Hana, after a long look at Jin's face, agreed. One last time, Jin, make it clear it's a farewell. But be careful. A rejected animal can be unpredictable. Jin walked out to the forest, his heart like a stone in his chest. He did not bring any food. This was not a day for gifts. This was a day for goodbye. The pack found him quickly. Little one ran forward, chirping happily. He went to nip Jin's boot, but Jin took a small step back. The cub stopped, confused. It tried again, and Jin stepped back again. This was not their game. Scar came forward, sensing something was wrong. She nudged his hand with her nose, but Jin did not raise it to pet her. He just stood there, his hands at his sides, his head bowed. He looked at Scar. He looked at her intelligent, questioning eyes. He didn't have words she could understand, so he tried to speak with his body. He let out a low, sad sigh. He made a soft, whimpering sound, the sound of a hurt pack member. He slowly knelt down. He reached out and touched the soft fur on Scar's muzzle, a final, gentle touch. Then he stood up. He took another step back, away from the pack. He was leaving. A low whine rose from Little One. It understood. It trotted forward and gently, sadly, nipped his boot one last time. It was not a playful nip. It was a plea. Scar looked at him. She let out a deep, questioning chuff. She took a step towards him. Jin shook his head, tears now in his eyes. He took another step back. For a long moment, Scar just stared at him. Her 6 eyes seemed to see right into his sorrow. Then she did something astonishing. She lifted her head to the sky and let out a long, lonely howl. It was a sound of loss, a sound of mourning for a pack member who was leaving. The rest of the pack joined in, their voices creating a beautiful, heartbreaking song that echoed through the trees. Then they turned. As one, they moved away from him, heading deeper into their territory. They did not look back. Jin stood alone in the clearing, the echo of their howl the only thing keeping him company. He had done the right thing. He had said goodbye, but it felt like he had torn out a piece of his own soul. He turned and walked slowly back to the outpost, to a world that suddenly felt very small and very empty. The days after the goodbye were gray and quiet for Jin. The outpost felt like a prison. He did his work, but his heart was not in it. He missed the feeling of the sun on his face during the long walks. He missed the sound of the forest. Most of all, he missed the simple, trusting nudge of a giant head against his chest. Dr. Ree was satisfied. He wrote his report, stating that the separation, while emotionally difficult for the human subject, was successful and for the long-term benefit of the Cathar species. He packed his bags and left Sylvan Prime. The outpost was back to its normal routine, but a sadness hung in the air. Su-min tried to cheer Jin up. You did the right thing, Jin. You let them be wild. Jin just nodded. He knew she meant well, but her words did not help. He had not just let them be wild. He had broken a promise. He had left his family. A week passed. Then another. Jin spent most of his time inside, watching the old video feeds from his camera. He watched the first time Little One nipped his boot. He watched the cub fall asleep against his side. He watched the pack howl their goodbye. It was a painful routine, but he could not stop. One morning, Hana called him to the main sensor station. Her face was serious. Jin, you need to see this, she said. On the screen was a map of the area around the outpost. A red blip was flashing right at the edge of the forest, very close to the fence. It's a life form, a big one. It's just sitting there. It's been there for hours, Hana said. Jin's heart jumped.
Is it?
We don't know, Su-min said, her voice tense. The sensors can't get a clear reading through the tree cover, but the size is right for a Cathar. A mix of hope and fear rushed through Jin. Why would one of them be here? Were they in trouble? Were they angry? Let me go out, Jin said immediately. Hana shook her head. No, it's too risky. We don't know their state of mind. The separation was clean. We should not restart contact, but what if they are hurt? Jin argued. What if little one is hurt? I have to check. He looked at Hana, his eyes pleading. After a long moment, she sighed. Okay, but you go to the fence only. You do not go into the forest. And you are on the comms the entire time. If I say come back, you come back immediately. Jin agreed. He walked quickly to the airlock, his hands shaking as he put on his jacket. He stepped out into the orange light. The air smelled different now. It smelled like loneliness. He walked to the high electrified fence that surrounded the outpost. He looked out towards the tree line. At first he saw nothing. Then a shadow moved. From behind a large razor-leafed tree, a Cathar emerged. It was not Little One. It was Scar. She walked slowly towards the fence. She stopped a few meters away on the other side. She was alone. She looked thin. Her head was low and her 6 eyes were fixed on him. She did not growl. She did not chuff. She just looked at him, and in her gaze Jin saw a deep, profound sadness. Then she made a sound. It was a soft, whimpering cry. It was the same sound Jin had made when he said goodbye. She missed him. Tears filled Jin's eyes. This was not about being wild or pure. This was about family. She had come to find her lost pack member. He heard Hana's voice in his earpiece. Jin, what is it? It's Scar, Jin said, his voice thick with emotion. She's here for me. There was a pause on the comms. Then Hana said, The rules, Jin, we cannot. But Jin was done with rules. The rules said to not interfere. The rules said to be separate. The rules were wrong. He looked at Scar, this magnificent, intelligent creature who had crossed her territory to find him. He made a decision. He walked to the control box for the fence. He typed in the code to shut off the power to a small section. Jin, what are you doing? Hana's voice was sharp in his ear. I'm following a better protocol, Jin said quietly. The hum of the electricity stopped. He pushed the gate open. He walked through the fence, out of the safety of the outpost and onto the wild soil of Sylvan Prime. Scar watched him, her ears perking up. He walked towards her slowly, his hands open. He stopped an arm's length away. I'm here, he whispered. I'm sorry I left. Scar took a final step forward. She pushed her great scarred head against his chest just like she used to. A deep rumbling purr started in her chest, vibrating through his whole body. It was a sound of welcome. It was a sound of home. From the tree line, more shadows emerged. Boulder, the other females, the young male scout, and then a smaller, faster shape burst out from between them. Little One ran towards him, his happy chirps filling the air. He skidded to a stop in front of Jin and nipped his boot with all his might. Click. Jin laughed. It was his real, warm, cheerful laugh, the one he had not used in weeks. He crouched down and scratched the cub behind the ears. I missed you too, little friend. The whole pack was here. They had all come for him. He looked back at the outpost. He could see Hana and Su-min watching from the window. He gave them a small wave. Then he turned back to his pack. Scar chuffed and turned, leading the way back into the forest. The pack fell in behind her. Jin walked with them, not on the edge, but right in the middle where he belonged. He was not a scientist observing animals anymore. He was not a human contaminating a wild species. He was Jin. He was the one whose boots got nipped. He was the one who laughed. And that cheerful response so long ago had not just saved his life. It had given him a new one. He was one of the pack. And he was finally going home.